My Bugatti is more beautiful than all works of art, proclaimed the great painter André Derain. One can really understand the enthusiasm and appreciation of the painter when one studies a Grand Prix Bugatti. It isn't perhaps a work of art in the literal sense, because its beauty is more functional and, in a way, coincidental. But it's certainly a masterpiece in its contours as well as its lines, whose balance and purity are faultless. That other great name in motor racing, Enzo Ferrari, wasn't quite the same art connoisseur as Bugatti, who came from a great creative family. However, when he described the creation of a racing car, he used words which were more artists' jargon than engineers.
Che la macchina bisogna prima sognarla, per poi chiedere ai propri collaboratori se si sentono in grado di realizzarla, se condividono il sogno di chi vuole ottenere successo.
A racing car, however, is basically conceived and designed for a reason. It has a job to do, and any technological considerations revolve around that basic raison d'être. Even so, some, if not all, racing cars generate admiration in what are almost sculptural qualities, which reveal the hand of the artist who created the shape, drew the lines, and embellished the profile. Is there then a mysterious rapport between beauty and practicality in spite of the differences between art and technology? Is it true, as some will suggest, that that which is beautiful is necessarily effective? Or, to put it in racing language, if it looks right, it usually is right? One thing is for sure, and that is that certain designers have more artistic talent than others. They may all be engineers, but not all have an artistic touch which, consciously or not, is revealed in their designs. Furthermore, the spirit of avant-garde unites certain engineers and certain artists in a common quest for innovation, with the same penchant for risk. Gordon Murray, who designed the Brabhams in the 70s and 80s, was never simply happy to design competitive cars. The product of his pen always had an air of elegance too.
I think generally in engineering, things that look right are right. It's something that happens almost subconsciously when you're drawing something. There are a lot of areas on the car that aren't actually aerodynamically important. And it's just as easy to make something pretty as not pretty. And it's something you have in you, I think. On the car design side, I think there's a very strong emotional feel, even though it's a very technical subject, a racing car. When you're designing a car, I certainly have a very strong emotional feel for it. And I think anything that's technically as perfect as a Formula One car is an art form anyway.
There is a style to creativity, but then there is also a style to driving itself. Quite simply, but also significantly, driving may be divided into two areas. There are the fighters or attackers, and the stylists. But first of all, can we assume, without abusing the term itself, that there is an art to driving?
I think any activity in the highest plane of ability develops into an art. To have the balance, the poise, the concentration, it takes an artistic touch to take out the most of any racing car, to be able to use a track more completely than anyone else, to recognize the limits of the car and manage them to the limits, the ultimate limits of the driver's skill. To be able to combine all of those things together is indeed a very special skill, which I believe is art form.
There again exists the coincidence between the beauty of the action itself and its efficiency. The art of driving has evolved with technology over the years. In these heroic early days, margins for manoeuvre were limited by the poor handling of the machines themselves. It was more a question of courage, of physical force, of tactics, and of mechanical sympathy. But once the chassis began to develop, along with suspension and tyres, a new style of driving was born, that of sliding the car, the controlled drift. This was deliberately induced to take advantage of the balance and manoeuvrability of the machine by surpassing the physical limit of adherence thanks to driving ability. Tazio Nuvolari was the inventor of this style of driving in the 30s. Later, Juan Manuel Fangio and Stirling Moss would take this style of driving to its limit. But Moss, in turn, invented his own technique. He discovered that there were new limits to braking, thanks to the progress made in road holding in the 50s and 60s.
The art of driving a car is to keep a car balanced, and you ask more of a car than one normally would, and you put it into a position where you're saying, I want you to steer, and taking the feedback from the car gives you a message. And I felt that obviously accelerating and braking, there isn't that much difference to one driver to another. There's some, but not that much. And I felt that if I could run my braking into a corner where my braking would then accelerate or compensate for steering. In other words, you go into a corner, if you brake at the right place, you can oversteer. You can then use that set oversteer, if you like, to accentuate the steering that the car will give you, and therefore utilize it for the cornering of the car.
Moss honed his style of driving by watching his sometime team leader and rival, Juan Manuel Fangio, who reckoned that science had nothing to do with it, and whether artist or driver, natural talent was everything.
Bueno, el estilo se va cumpliendo con el tiempo. Nadie nació sabiendo. Y al principio, cuando yo corría, todo lo agarraba fuerte. Hasta me lastimaba las manos. Después comprendí que no era necesario. Con los dedos se manejaba mejor. Y que todo se va haciendo con el tiempo. Nadie nació sabiendo. Todo lo aprendemos con el tiempo.
At the start of the 60s, the movement of engines in Formula One from the front to the mid-engined position in the chassis and the decrease in their power due to a reduction in capacity gave rise to a style of driving that was altogether more subtle. The very sensitive behavior of these passive machines, which seemed so ready to spin like a top at the slightest sudden change of balance, demanded an increasingly greater sense of precision and a touch more delicate than ever. Furthermore, the development of suspension which could be adjusted to each individual circuit demanded an increasingly greater relationship between a driver, his engineers, and his car. Jim Clark was the first expert of this trend, which continued and was established by Jackie Stewart and then Niki Lauda during the 70s. These champions established the theory of total temperance in their driving to the point where they managed totally to disguise any sensation of speed to observers. In fact, to watch those who practiced in this school of driving with their squeaky clean cornering lines and faultless acceleration, one was tempted to think, wrongly of course, that they were totally in control all the time. Equally, it seemed that their speed was in directly inverse proportion to the effort that they made to set quick times. Others, however, stayed faithful to a style of driving altogether more instinctive, generous, and spectacular. The Ronnie Petersons and Gilles Villeneuves of this world had just one passion, one creed, one approach: to attack to the limit. They fought as much with their cars as with the opposition, and they gave their all with great panache, even though it may not have been the ideal way of extracting the best from a Formula One car of the 70s or 80s. In fact, the advent of softer and softer tyres meant that their style of sideways driving tended to overheat their tyres, which was harmful to both their survival and efficiency. But it also caught the imagination of the crowds, who recognized how these crazy warriors generously let their spirit run amok. Their audacity, their extravagant style perpetuated the myth of the romantic daredevil heroes, elevating Grand Prix racing to the world of Beethoven. A Grand Prix start, the raucous din of unleashed engines which cause the earth, air and eardrums to vibrate in unison, is also the opening of an heroic overture. The field which jockeys fortissimo on the first lap, the sharp, abrupt gear changes, the mounting revs after each one, which mix together in a syncopated and frenetic rhythm. They sound like something produced by an orchestra gone mad. The irresistible flight of a Clark or a Senna equates to the lone escape of a soloist who copes with his task with the skill of a magician. A refueling stop perfected during the 80s at the height of the turbo engine's thirst is a ballet of rigorous precision, managed to perfection by the crew chief, who is briefly the director of choreography as he balances the awful potential danger of fuel escaping onto overheated mechanical parts and the need to waste the least time in order to send the impatient driver back into the race. The race's rhythm is a tune's tempo. It's imperative to avoid false notes, to run off the laps with the regularity of a metronome. Yes, great drivers are both sportsmen and artists. They demonstrate their art in their driving style, each in his own register. Fangio is the Grand Master, the Beethoven of the circuits. Clark was grace personified. the Mozart of Formula One. Stewart, or Finesse, was a sort of Debussy of the wheel. Lauda drove as Bach composed, with an unfailing discipline. Prost, always precise, is the Vivaldi of the tracks. Senna, the introverted genius, he is the Schumann of Grand Prix racing. And one can come up with many more comparisons, without forgetting Strauss and his waltzes, of course. The score of a Grand Prix is sometimes perilous for the players, and those who conduct appreciate that.
Von Karajan un giorno mi disse e mi scrisse: ascoltando il vostro 12 cilindri scaturisce un'armonia che nessun maestro saprà mai interpretare.
But art in Formula One is also a fascination with machines, and Jean Tinguely uses them as a basis for his art. They are part of his life's work, and he admires them so much that he shares his room with Jim Clark's Lotus.
Nous en sommes, avec la Formule 1, arrivés à un point où l'être humain crée un objet, crée un mythe, crée une chose fantastique qui est pour moi œuvre d'art parce qu'elle a cette qualité de me surprendre, de me bouleverser, de me faire vivre, de me faire respirer avec mon étonnement brûlant en voyant cette incroyable aventure de l'homme avec la machine.
With a bit of mockery, Tinguely's creaking creations attempt to track the secret of movement. Emanuele Zorini, on the other hand, tries to convey speed in bronze. He was originally a photographer but wanted to express the abstract of the speed of racing cars in model form, as seen through his own particular lenses.
En fait, quand je crée une sculpture, pour évoquer une idée, j'essaye de la dépouiller le plus possible de certaines de ses formes, comme les ailerons, les porte-à-faux aérodynamiques, toutes ces choses-là, tous ces appendices qui font qu'en fait, quand on détaille, c'est pas joli, quoi. J'essaye de rendre les choses le plus fluide possible, et comme c'est quand même un objet qui est par définition statique, si je commence à l'alourdir d'artifices, ça sera au détriment du dynamisme dans la lecture de l'objet, quoi.
Michel Leconte is among the many artists worldwide who like to bring their subject matter to a standstill in order to work their own magic on it and make it move again, faster than ever.
Quand j'étais jeune peintre, je faisais une traduction qui était plutôt non figurative. Et plus je me suis intéressé à cet univers, plus j'ai travaillé et j'ai approché les hommes, plus je suis devenu réaliste.
Photography was virtually conceived with the automobile. And since the first masterpieces of Jacques-Henri Latigue, the kindly forerunner in this genre, it has perhaps been this medium that has best expressed the magic of speed and transformed our perception of space and time, representing the most amazing phenomenon of the century. Latigue's successors worldwide are well known. Assay, Snowden, Schlegelmilch or Rondeau, whose pictures capture and retain the spirit of racing in an imaginative kaleidoscope of lines and colours. Children, of course, are the first to be fascinated by the world of Formula One, which is conveyed to them by the medium of the strip cartoon. The adventures of Michel Vaillant are seen through the eyes of Jean Graton, who manages to embellish fact with fiction, making attractive and intriguing stories. Formula One has even been touched by the legendary Beatles. George Harrison composed and sang a moving tribute to Ronnie Peterson after the fatal accident which claimed the life of the great Swedish driver.
Faster than a bullet from a gun, he is faster than everyone, quicker than the blinking of an eye, like a flash you can miss him going by. No one knows.
Even so, there was a typical touch of British humour of the video that went with it. Why, it's Jackie Stewart chauffeuring the roles. Artists, whether wielding bow, paintbrush or steering wheel, either interpreting or participating, are all made of the same stuff. They share the same desires, take the same risks, and draw from the same sources. They seek determination to push them on an unending road to perfection, an inspiration which satisfies their taste for excess, carrying them beyond the known limits of lesser mortals.